gosh, the gall of this woman. I'm kind of entranced by her myself, I'm going to be honest. But even more so, there are little interludes in this very odd meeting, and they are fascinating. I've got no idea what's going on, but I can't wait to find out, actually. I didn't think I was going to like this as much as I am. So, I know why we were cutting to the police officer now. Um, and it has kind of slowed down a little bit. It's still quite fast paced, but it has slowed down because we know what the motive is. We know why Olive was approached now, and it's kind of getting a little bit more investigative. No, that's not how you say that. I do genuinely really love the escalation. It just, it went so high so fast, which isn't a complaint. I think it did it really well, and I think the pacing is really fitting for the book and what it's doing. I just, yeah, I'm having a good time. It's kind of like, I guess, a roller coaster. I really love the motive for what set this all off. It does sound a little bonkers, and frankly, that's all the more compelling because the fact that this mysterious woman would wholeheartedly believe this just fascinates me. And also, there is still a lot of mystery around it, so we're in quite a precarious position right now, and it's so exciting. I have commented on the pacing before, but given the fact that this isn't going up in 2023, I think the disconnect is becoming increasingly stark, even for like a flare up of chronic fatigue. And yes, it did start with a propulsive pace, and I'm finding it very readable. But it is losing me a little bit now that it's slowed down for the investigation. And I do think it had to. And I also appreciate the scenes that we're getting now of Olive's home life, which is a little bit harder to read. It's really well drawn, but she's also miserable, and man, I absolutely would be too in that position. But yeah, it's when I noticed that, I picked up this The Forest of Stolen Girls again to see how that would go, and I am actually faster at reading this, even though I think the text is also a little bit smaller. And to be clear, I'm enjoying it, but it's also not as competently written as The Fake Wife. But yeah, I think the investigation and the way it's slowed everything down is kind of the meeting, the cop, I think his name is Gary, his own little raid, the revelations, the disappearance, the motive. It couldn't keep raising the stakes like that, but it is also quite a stark difference. So I'm just a little bit confused now. When it was focusing on Olive with cuts to Gary, it felt like the meeting with the fake wife and the police raid were concurrent, but now it's Gary's doing his investigating. He's done an interview, he went home for the night, he's at the office again, and we're cutting back to a car crash, and it doesn't feel like these things are happening concurrently anymore. Maybe they are because, it's winter and the sun doesn't come up for a long, long time. But if the book hasn't, then I definitely have lost track, which isn't out of the ordinary. I'm notoriously bad at like keeping track of dates, but yeah, not helping. Apologies for how slow this is going. But I have made some progress on the fake wife. We are, in fact, in part two, and I'd completely forgotten that this was in parts. Because, because of being unwell, I did take enough time away from it to no longer be as kind of surprised, I guess, by the fact it that the timelines had moved out of sync, uh, by the way that it had slowed down. And I think a break, not as much as I took, but a break was good for that. I actually, the end of part one was slower because we were moving into the detectiving phase of it, but I really like the way it's going in part two. I'm also like more appreciative now of the way that it switched from being about Olive with little kind of interludes following Gary, and now to like following Gary and his investigations with interludes to Olive. In particular, in the past, I'm really enjoying seeing the lies unravel. It's really pulled my attention back now, and I am very intrigued by a lot of the threads that it is dangling. Social media harassment, Eloise. Yeah. Now more than ever, there's a sense that we cannot trust anyone in the cast, and I really enjoy that part of it. But also, I really like how Gary keeps making these decisions, and it's like, I get it, but also you shouldn't be doing that. And I hope that kind of comes to something. The out of syncness of the time now is still, I've come to terms with it. I'm still not sure how I feel about it overall. I do get that it's kind of building up tension and is she okay, but since they function more as like interludes now, I don't know, it just kind of feels like it's drawing it out too much. Because they've now kind of mostly been like a paragraph of Olive wakes up and she passes out again, Olive wakes up and she passes out again, and then it goes on to something from her past. And I feel like we could just be doing the stuff with the glimpses into her past rather than it's not padding, but you know what I mean? I'm not going to show you what it's called, but I gasped. I think my comments with this book have made it pretty apparent that I'm not that familiar with crime as a genre. I am getting more into it. I am really enjoying A Disappearance in Fiji. June Hur and Jeannie Lynn are great. I have gotten to know the genre enough to know that I prefer it when the police are viewed a little bit more critically. But that's a preference, and I've liked plenty of books and depictions of police that aren't critical of it. That said, this is a thing that keeps coming to mind every time I read this book, and so I was wondering, why is it something that I keep coming back to? And with this chapter, it's like I've known all along, but with this chapter, it's just kind of, they're not good cops. And I do really like that this is too personal for Gary, and I like that he cares so much about solving this, even though he's probably really bad for the case in the long run. Like, he's not meant to do a lot of the investigating that he's been doing. He has been doing it off hours, and now he has broken into a shed, and he's suggesting that they break into the house. And there is a kind of plausible reason for it, but he broke into the shed before he had that plausible reason. And yeah, so they are bad cops, and it's not. I don't know. He's not being praised for it. He has been yelled at to go home, but at the same time, I don't. I don't hate the book for it, but yeah, it's a little frustrating for me as a reader. I can't move in here anymore. Can't put my cup down anymore. So, firstly, Happy New Year. Secondly, we were on page 306 of 355, and almost all of the pieces have fallen into place now. I really have enjoyed like the setup of it, the slow hints, clues. I think it's done really well. I am now having the problem of like being really into it, and so every time I am on like this page, I keep unintentionally glancing over to this page, and it's slowing me down so much. There are about 35 pages towards the end of the book where the tension ramps like it did at the beginning again, and it was amazing. I really enjoyed this, and that final page as well. That is fantastic. I really like this. I really enjoyed it. I think I've talked a little bit about Gary and his not so great policing. I For me, I did quite like him and Lexi. I liked the camaraderie. It was peppered through, however, with like hinting at them becoming a couple. And I don't know, there are reviews on the back of the dust jacket that are full of praise for the book. And a few of them are for the characters, and I really loved Olive. And Sam was so compelling. I I don't know. because the way Gary's written is that he's such a good guy, and I found him quite sweet in a bland way, which again is kind of why I didn't like, you know. I think he is probably one of the weaker elements of the story. Like I said, his relationship with Olive, and that impacting his detectiving, that was good and that was compelling, but he himself not so much. So I think this is a really good book if you like. I think this is a really good book, but I think he is possibly one of the weaker parts of it, unfortunately. I know I was a little bit uncertain about like the shift in pacing at the beginning, and it's still not my favourite part of the book, but I actually really do like this, and I am quite excited because, of course, Orion did that thing where they put other books by the author at the end. The split sounds interesting. It's also mentioning ice and danger, which was actually an element about this that I really liked. The winter landscape was very dangerous and very atmospheric and made me want winter back. But I am particularly excited about The Pact, which is like a Daredevil ish game between friends that goes wrong, and three people end up dead. And so one person takes the blame, takes the fall, and the others are like, when you get out of jail, we'll each pay you a favor. And then they start disappearing, and that sounds amazing. As for the rest of the Orion Book Haul vlogs, I had actually been thinking I was going to do like the Sunrise Sisterhood or 30 Days in Paris. I know, um, because I thought I'd want something lighter after this, but I think I'm actually going to go with either Stay or Complicit because they're also kind of thrillery books, darker, more intense, and it's really put me in the mood for that kind of thing. No specific date for that next vlog, but possibly next month. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your patience. Bye.